Welcome back to Calm Readings with Roy, where we read Banned by Disney, the best creepypasta in existence. Disney took that community and essentially broke it over its knee as well. The houses were razed, the land was cleared, and there wasn't a damn thing anyone could do or say about it. Local TV and newspapers were against the resort at the beginning, but some insane connection between Disney's media holdings and the local venues came into play, and their opinions turned on a dime. So anyway, Treasure Island, the Bahamas, Disney sunk those millions and then split. The same thing happened with Mowgli's Palace. The construction was complete. Visitors actually stayed at the resort. The surrounding communities were flooded with traffic, and the usual annoyances associated with an influx of lost and irate tourists. Then it all just stopped. Disney shut it down, and nobody knew what the hell to think. They were pretty happy about it. Disney's loss was pretty hilarious and wonderful to a large group of folks who didn't want this in the first place. I honestly didn't give the place another thought since hearing it close over a decade ago. I lived maybe 4 hours from Emerald Isle, so I only really heard about the ramblings and didn't experience any of it firsthand. Then I read this article from someone who had explored the Treasure Island Resort and posted a whole blog about all this crazy shit he found there. Stuff just left behind, things smashed, defaced, probably ruined by disgruntled former employees who had lost their jobs. Hell, the locals from all around probably had a hand in wrecking that place. People there felt just as angry about Treasure Island as the folks here did about Mowgli's Palace. Plus, there are rumors that Disney had released their aquarium stock into the local waters when they closed, including sharks. Who wouldn't want to take a few swings at some merchandise after that? Well, what I'm getting at is that this blog about Treasure Island got me thinking. Even though many years had passed since closing, I figured it'd be cool to do some urban exploration at Mowgli's Palace, take some photos, write about my experience, and probably see if there was anything I could take home as a memento. I'm not going to say I wasted no time getting there, because honestly, it took me another year after I first found that Treasure Island article to get around to getting up to Emerald Isle. Say over the course of that year, I did a lot of research on the Palace Resort, or rather, I tried to. Naturally, no official Disney site or resource made any of the mention of the place. That had been script clean. Even odder, however, was that nobody before myself had apparently thought to blog about the place or even post a memento. None of the local TV or newspaper sites had one word about the place, though that was to be expected, since they had all this swung Disney's way. They wouldn't be out there lauding their embarrassment, you know. Recently, I learned that corporations can actually ask Google, for example, to remove links from search results, basically for no good reason. Looking back, it's probably not that anybody spoke of the resort, but rather their words were made inaccessible. So in the end, I could barely find any about the place. All I had to go on was just an old-ass map I received in the mail back in the 90s. It was a promotional item sent out to people who had recently been to Disney World, and I guess I had been there since late in the 80s. That was recent. I didn't really intend to hang on to it. It just got shoved in my books, the comments from my childhood. I only remembered it months into my research, and even then it took me another few weeks to locate the storage bin my parents had shoved it all into. But I did find it. Locals were no help, as most were transplants who had moved to the beach in recent years. There were old residents who just sneered at me and made rude gestures the second I managed to say where I could find Mowgli's. The drive took me through an enormous, large corridor of overgrowth. Tropical plants that had run rampant and overpopulated the area mixed with the native species of flora that actually belonged there and had tried to reclaim the land. I was in awe when I reached the front of the gates of the resort. Tremendous, monolithic wooden gates, whose supports to either side looked they must have been cut from giant sequoias. The gate itself had been gorged in several places by woodpeckers and eaten away at the base by burrowing insects. Hanging on the gate was a sheet of metal, some random scrap, with hand-painted letters scrawled in black, abandoned by Disney. Clearly the handwork of some past local or an employee who wanted to make some small protest. The gates were open enough to walk through, but not drive, so grabbing my digital camera and the map, whose flip side showed a later layout of the resort, I set off on foot. The inner grounds of the place were just overgrown as the entryway. Palm trees stood unattended and ragged among piles of their own coconuts. Banana plants similarly stood in their own stinking, bug-riddled refuse. There is some sort of clash between order and chaos, as carefully planted rows of perennial flowers mix with obnoxious tall weeds and stinking blackened mushrooms. All that remained of any outdoor structures were broken, rotting wood and various charred bits of unidentifiable material. What was most likely an information booth or an outdoor bar was now simply a pile of assorted debris chopped up by past vandalism and ravaged by weather. The most interesting thing on the grounds was a statue of Baloo, the friendly bear from Jungle Book, which seemed to serve courtyard in front of the main building. He was frozen in a juvenile way forward. No one, staring into an empty space with a silly toothy grin as the bird shit covered the whole soft of his fur and vines and cheers platform. I approached the main building, the palace, only to find the outside of the building covered in graffiti, where the original paint had peeled, chipped away. The front doors weren't just open, they had been taken off their hinges and were stolen. Above the front doors, or the gaping maw they have been, someone had once again painted "Abandoned by Disney." I wish I could tell you about all the awesome stuff I saw inside the palace. Forgotten statues, abandoned cash registers, a full-fledged secret society of homeless bums, but no. The side of the building was so stark, so bare, that I think people had actually stolen the molding off the walls. Anything that was too big to steal, counters, desks, giant fake trees, they're all rusting amid this empty echo chamber that amplified my every step like a slow rat-a-tat of a machine gun. I checked the floor plan and headed all the locations that might seem in any way interesting. The kitchen, as you'd imagine, an industrial food prep area with all the appliances in space. No expenses spared. Every glass surface was broken, every door knocked off its hinges, every metal surface kicked and dented, The entire place smelled like very old piss.